Real evidence plus TAME plus the exercise paradox. Metformin is the OG longevity drug. It's cheap, it's old, and it has more human exposure than almost any other biohacker favorite. But here's the truth that makes this episode worth watching. Metformin might help some people age better, and might do nothing for others. And for a specific group of healthy, lean, highly active people, metformin may even be counterproductive if they care about maximizing training adaptations. So today we're not doing hype, and we're not doing fear. We're building a decision tree. By the end, you'll know who it helps, who it may hurt, what to monitor, and why the famous TAME trial everyone cites is still more of a plan than a finished proof. If you've ever wondered, should a healthy person take metformin for longevity, this is the clearest way to think about it. First, why metformin is even in the longevity conversation. Clinically, metformin is a first-line medication for type 2 diabetes because it improves glucose control largely by reducing hepatic glucose production and improving insulin sensitivity, with a low risk of hypoglycemia on its own. That core benefit is real, measurable, and why it's used worldwide. The longevity hypothesis is that metformin also touches pathways that overlap with aging biology: AMPK signaling, nutrient sensing, inflammation, mitochondrial function, and even the gut microbiome. The key phrase is mechanistic plausibility, not proven longevity in healthy humans. Mechanisms are the trailer, not the movie. Now here's why people get misled. There are 3 layers of evidence, and the internet treats them like they're the same thing. They are not. Layer 1 is observational data. The famous headline years ago was that people with type 2 diabetes started on metformin sometimes appeared to have better survival than matched non-diabetic controls. That lit the longevity community on fire for obvious reasons, but observational results are vulnerable to bias, healthy user bias, time-related bias, confounding by disease severity, and treatment sequencing. Translation: observational wow headlines can be real, and still not mean what people think. That's why newer reviews describe emerging uncertainty about metformin's anti-aging potential when you zoom out and look at the full body of evidence in non-diabetic populations. If you want truth over vibes, this is a big one. Layer 2 is where metformin looks most real for non-diabetics: randomized trials in high-risk people. The Diabetes Prevention Program is the anchor. In prediabetes, metformin reduced progression to diabetes compared with placebo, and that benefit persisted to some degree over long follow-up. But here's the part most longevity influences skip. Over long-term follow-up in DPPOS, metformin did not reduce major cardiovascular events compared with placebo. And in the 21-year cancer incidence follow-up, metformin also did not significantly reduce total cancer incidence compared with placebo. So if your brain wants a simple headline, here it is. In the biggest long-run randomized dataset we have in prediabetes, metformin prevented diabetes, but it didn't clearly reduce heart events or total cancer incidence overall. That doesn't mean metformin is bad. It means the longevity claim is not settled by the best long-run RCT dataset. Layer 3 is the contrarian segment: randomized trials where metformin appears to blunt exercise adaptations. This matters because for a longevity compass audience, exercise is not just nice. It's the closest thing we have to a proven longevity drug. In a 12-week aerobic exercise training trial in older adults, metformin attenuated improvements in insulin sensitivity and cardiorespiratory fitness, and it appeared to inhibit some mitochondrial respiration and protein synthesis adaptations in skeletal muscle. Not everyone responded the same way. Some people looked like non-responders or even negative responders, but the signal is real enough to take seriously. Then there's the Masters trial. Healthy adults 65 and older did 14 weeks of progressive resistance training, and the placebo group gained more lean mass and thigh muscle mass than the metformin group. The authors describe metformin as negatively impacting the hypertrophic response to resistance training in these healthy older individuals. So here's the uncomfortable but useful takeaway. If your longevity plan is protect VO2 max, protect muscle, protect power, you should be cautious about anything that blunts those adaptations in randomized trials. Metformin may be a better fit when metabolic dysfunction is the dominant problem, not when training adaptation is the main lever you're trying to maximize. Now let's zoom out. What do we know about metformin in non-diabetics beyond the DPP? There are studies in non-diabetic coronary disease and metabolic risk populations looking at surrogate outcomes, and results are mixed. For example, in non-diabetic patients with coronary heart disease and larger waist circumference, metformin did not significantly change progression of carotid intima media thickness over 18 months in the CAMERA study. That's not a "metformin failed" verdict. It's a reminder that not every plausible mechanism turns into a clear clinical signal over short time horizons. In a different higher risk profile, non-diabetic patients with coronary disease, left ventricular hypertrophy, and insulin resistance and/or prediabetes, modified release metformin reduced left ventricular mass index in the MET-RE trial. That's interesting, but still largely surrogate style, and also shows the real-world limitation. GI tolerability issues led to dose reductions or stopping for some participants. And that's why people still care about bigger hard outcome trials. One ongoing example is VA Impact, designed to test whether metformin reduces mortality and cardiovascular events in veterans with prediabetes and established atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. That's the kind of trial that could move the conversation from mechanisms and biomarkers toward, does it change outcomes in high-risk people? Now we need to talk about TAME, because this is the evidence anchor everyone cites. TAME, targeting aging with metformin, was designed as a neuroscience proof of principle trial. Instead of treating one disease, test whether metformin delays the first occurrence of any major age-related outcome. Design described in the protocol literature is roughly 3,000 adults around 65 to 79 without diabetes, metformin versus placebo, and a primary endpoint composite including outcomes like myocardial infarction, stroke, heart failure, many cancers, cognitive impairment, dementia, and death. It was also framed as an FDA-facing strategy to make targeting aging testable through accepted clinical endpoints. Here's the critical credibility line. TAME is not the completed proof yet. It's been planned and publicly described for years, but as of recent updates, it has not fully launched because funding is still being raised. AFA even describes it explicitly as raising funds to launch. So if you hear someone say, metformin is proven because TAME, that's misinformation. TAME is the trial we want. It's not the trial we already have. Now let's build the decision tree, because that's what you came for. Bucket 1. Higher likelihood benefit. If you're metabolically high risk, prediabetes, insulin resistance, rising A1C, visceral adiposity, strong family history, metformin has the strongest RCT footing as a diabetes prevention tool. The ADA standards of care say metformin for prevention of type 2 diabetes should be considered in adults at high risk, typified by the DPP population. Translation: if your aging accelerator is metabolic dysfunction, metformin may be a rational lever to discuss with a clinician. Still not proven as a longevity drug in healthy humans, but more grounded than most off-label longevity ideas. Bucket 2. Unclear or low upside. If you're healthy, lean, insulin sensitive, and already doing the basics, sleep, protein, strength training, cardio, low alcohol, metformin's upside shrinks. Now you're mostly weighing speculative longevity benefits against real downsides like GI intolerance, B12 deficiency risk, and the exercise adaptation issue. Bucket 3. Potential downside for the training-focused. If your longevity strategy is built on preserving VO2 max, mitochondria, and muscle hypertrophy, metformin's blunting signals in aerobic and resistance training trials matter. This doesn't mean it will blunt everyone. It means you should not assume it's free. Bucket 4. Higher safety risk where it can hurt. Kidney impairment changes the equation, because FDA labeling is clear. Metformin is contraindicated below eGFR 30, not recommended to start at eGFR 30 to 45, and kidney function monitoring matters. Heavy alcohol use and conditions raising hypoxia risk also shift risk, and metformin has important procedural guidance around iodinated contrast in certain situations. Now the monitoring checklist, because longevity without monitoring is just guessing. If someone is discussing metformin off-label with a clinician, the monitoring conversation usually includes baseline and periodic kidney function, glycemic markers to confirm there's even a metabolic target, and vitamin B12, because long-term metformin use is associated with B12 deficiency and anemia, and regulators have issued specific monitoring advice. That B12 point is the stealth issue for healthy users. You can feel fine for a long time while B12 drops, and then you get neuropathy symptoms like numbness and tingling, fatigue, anemia signs, or cognitive complaints. This is one of those boring but important parts of real-life longevity medicine. So what's the longevity compass conclusion? Metformin might be a longevity drug for the metabolically high risk. For healthy, lean, highly active people, the evidence is not strong enough to justify it as a default, and the exercise adaptation trade-off is a real consideration. And the funniest part is that the most reliable, metformin-like, longevity effects still come from the lifestyle moves people try to skip. Strength training, aerobic capacity, sleep consistency, and controlling blood pressure and lipids. Metformin should not be used to avoid the fundamentals. It should only be considered when the fundamentals aren't enough for your risk profile. If this helped, hit like and subscribe, and check the description for our Longevity Compass book and the tools that help you measure what matters. The goal is not to collect longevity drugs. The goal is to build a body and brain that function well for decades, evidence first.